Hello, this is Sonny Kumukoa. This is a tutorial that I'm going to do in Lightroom. This is my first one ever doing, so bear with me. I have no idea how I sound, probably like an idiot, but at least I'll give you some basics on how to simply approach a photo and get the final product. This is just the way that I do it. It's not necessarily the right way, but it's my method and we'll go from there. So first we're going to go ahead and select the image in Lightroom. We're going to make sure we're clicked on the develop module. And what I like to do once I have that image, I'm just going to go ahead and shrink that by clicking on the little bottom arrow so it's not popping up and I can get a larger view of the image. My presets and everything, I don't necessarily need to see those at the moment, so I can go ahead and minimize those guys and give me even a bigger viewing space. Now the first thing that I look at, which is one of my big issues, is shooting crooked. So it happens, you're floating around the water, it's just one of those things you have to deal with. So I'm looking at the image, what I'm going to do is choose the crop tool and I can adjust either this way, or the easier way is actually if you have this little angle tool, just click on it and select part of the horizon and drag all the way across until you kind of get that even line and it'll snap down right there. So obviously we're losing a part of the image. At this point I can choose whether I want to move over a little bit or shift this direction. I like a lot of the reflections right here on the left side, so I'm going to keep the crop more towards this side, maybe just pull it a little bit to get those rocks kind of in a good spot. And I can either double click on here and it'll show me my adjusted crop, or I could have just clicked right here back on that tool. So once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and enable my profile corrections. Now depending on the lens you shoot with, for example, if you did this with a fisheye, it's going to make the image pretty crazy looking. This is shot with a 16-35, probably in the mid-range around 19 millimeters, so I'll enable that and you can see automatically what it's doing. It kind of brightens up the outside vignetting that the lens kind of naturally does at certain apertures. So that's the after, I'll get the before. So I'm going to keep it on there. I like that, how it kind of lightens up the sides of it. If you need to make more adjustments, you have these tools right here for vignetting. You can see I can draw it back in, or I could even lighten it up a bit more. So I might kind of lighten it just a little bit, just so I kind of get more even lighting throughout the image. It's really personal preference, but that's just the way that I like to see it. What I'm going to do next is zoom in at 100%, kind of a 1-to-1 ratio, just to check my image to make sure things are in focus and sharp, which on this image in particular I focused kind of on the mid ground, so I already know my background is going to be not completely in focus. It just kind of gives me a sense of what's there, but not necessarily tack sharp. For this image I wanted the main focus to be the reflections on the water, so that is my focal point for this image. What I will do next is kind of zoom in and see these little spots right here. Probably seaweed, but I don't like them, so what I did was choose on the spot removal tool. You see the adjustments on here. You can adjust the size of it right on the right side, or you can just use your mouse wheel, scroll up and down to select the appropriate size on it. Now this one you can use just a circle, one click like that if it works, or you can use big long line. So I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that last one. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of drag around the image with my mouse. All I'm doing is holding down on the left button and dragging around and scrolling through my image. So I see another one right here. So I'll click on that. Now naturally my eye at least knows where I did those corrections, and it bothers me sometimes because I'll look at it after I did the adjustment and I'll still see kind of maybe some line or something like that that might stand out to me, but you wouldn't see with the naked eye. So what I'll do for a lot of these corrections is once I click it, I'll close my eyes and let it go, and then I'll open my eyes. If I can't see it, then that's a lot better. Then I won't know it's there. That means it was a good, clean correction. If I keep my eyes open, I tend to notice exactly where I did my edits, and it's a never-ending game. So I'll fix that guy right there. While I'm using this tool, if I want to just drag around, I can hold down the space bar and click with my left mouse as I drag around as well. Just another way of doing it. And here's two little small ones, so for that one I'll drag it across. And it didn't get it quite like I wanted, so I'm going to undo that. Maybe largen this a little bit, and then try it again. Perfect. And it looks like we have a person over here on the hillside. So what I'm going to do is drag that guy, get him out, and you see it's kind of messy. This is why I typically don't use this tool too much in Lightroom. I prefer Photoshop because it's just a lot cleaner and easier. What I will do is get rid of this. Looks like a bird probably flying by. Get rid of that guy. Alright, perfect. So I've gotten rid of my basic spots that I wanted to remove. What I'm going to do next is open it up into Photoshop so I can get rid of this person right here because this one's really bothering me. Just real quick before I do exit out of there, one big thing that I like to do under that lens correction tool is click on the color tab and remove chromatic aberration. Now this is usually like a pink line, green, could be purple, kind of a fringing on the photo, like a little outline line. It happens with certain lenses at certain apertures. It's just something you can't really avoid. It's just a problem you can fix at least though. So alright, so what we're going to do is Command E, which will take us into Photoshop, or I can right click, edit in, and choose Photoshop. So it'll take a second and open up. My computer's a little slow, so hopefully this goes a little bit faster than normal. There we go. Alright, so now we're in Photoshop. The nice thing about this is I can zoom in quite a bit more, and it just makes it easier to edit the image and see all the full details. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and hit Command J, which is the Apple J on the Mac, and duplicate that layer. So that way, if I do an adjustment, I'm not touching the original layer. Now there's a couple ways of doing it. You can create a layer this way and just kind of work on that. That way it doesn't add to the file size too much. It's just a clear layer, so anything you do on there, you know, you're not affecting the actual image itself. So depending on the image, when I'm adjusting, you know, I'll typically do this for a lot of spot removal. But at the moment, what I'm going to do is that spot removal first. So I'm just going to keep that layer. It just makes it easier so I can compare the final image too. And I can't scroll all the way over, so I'm going to hold my space bar down and drag it. And it's pretty far in there, so I'm zoomed in pretty far. Now what I'm going to use is the content aware. Kind of shrink that down a little bit, and we'll go ahead and try and brush over this a little bit. See how that works. That's not too bad. I might try get a little bit lower on that one. And you see how it's kind of leaving that line. I don't like the way that's looking, so this is something you might want to choose the stamp tool instead. Now stamp tool, if you just select the area that you want to copy from, you hold down the option, it gives you a little dropper, and I'm going to go really close, something with the same angle right there, and I'm just going to click down with the mouse, and now wherever I go, it's going to copy that section. Now you can see the little crosshairs right to the left, that's showing me where it's taking that selection from. So that looks pretty decent. I might change the opacity on it. It's at 100% right now to like maybe 10% to make sure I can get rid of all of this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp right above and brush it in. Now this may be overkill, but I typically can see where I made adjustments if it's not clear, and it bothers me. So that's it. I'll get off of there and I'll zoom out, and what I'm going to do is just kind of look around and see if there's anything else that's really bothering me. The only thing that's catching my eye right now is right in the middle. There is this little reflective piece of sand. Now it kind of is nice, it kind of adds to the image, but personally I don't care for it. So what I'm going to do is get rid of it. The reason I want you to basically go through the image and not get distracted by one section of it. Typically your eyes will draw straight to that little spot, and I don't know, it kind of takes away from the image myself, personally, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and brush over this guy. A little triangle. And it got it pretty clean. So that's pretty much it. I'm pretty happy with the rest of the image. There we go. I see one more. This little one right here makes it look more like a dust spot to me. So I'll kind of brush over that. Now when I'm doing this, I don't typically use a mouse. I use a Wacom tablet, which basically gives me a pen style mouse. So the pressure sensitivity, it helps out a lot more than a typical mouse would. So this is pretty much it on here. Normally I'd go through and adjust the levels and curves on it. Now for this one, if you don't have this program, I apologize, but this is typically one I use. It's made by Google, and it's Viveza 2. The reason I do this versus just checking down and creating a levels and curves layer, I'm lazy, and this seems to work the best for me. What it does is it combines the levels and curves all in one program right here. So it just makes it easier. There's less adjusting on it. And what I'm doing right here, the left side is going to be your blacks, the right side is going to be your highlights, your whites, and the middle point, that's mostly your contrast right there, your midpoint. So I'm just going to tweak this around until it looks basically good to my eye. See, the lower I go, the darker it gets. If I move to the left, it lightens it back up. So typically adjust this guy right here. I'll grab, it's a little dark, so I'll put another point here. I'll bring back in some of the highlights. Now you can see this is kind of turning into a little S-shaped style curve. That's kind of what you want to look for. And if I click right here, I can kind of see the before and after on it. So pretty nice if I zoom in 100%. Click before and after. You can see it kind of enhances everything. Now the next thing I'm going to do in this panel is choose the structure tool and kind of bump this up. Now this pulls in a lot of the detail. So you can see now a little bit more refined. I'll kind of undo what I just did. You see a slight adjustment on it, but I'll typically go no more than 10% on here. If you go a little too far, it tends to pixelate and paint your image, which isn't the look that I'm going for. And the last thing I'll do is, I wouldn't say last, but I'll tweak with the contrast sometimes and see. I think we got enough on there. And the overall image now, I might brighten it up. It's very similar to using the levels and curves right down here, but it just kind of gives you the full view of it. It's just easier in my opinion. But once we're done with this, I'm just going to click OK. and that's going to basically pull that back into Photoshop as a layer, and that way I can click and unclick to see exactly what it did. So on the whole, I pretty much like what it did. There we go. I just don't like this bottom part. It's a little too dark for my personal preference. So I'm going to click down right here and create a layer, and then I'm going to use the gradient tool. Now the gradient tool, you can use percentage on here. I'll put it at 100% so you can see what I'm talking about. I start from the bottom because that's the darkest part, and I can drag it up, and you can see how it lightened it. And if you actually uncheck these guys, you see exactly what it did. It basically erased part of this layer at 100%, and it didn't erase the entire image. You can see it kind of got a little percentage up here, but not too much. Now 100% in my opinion a little too much for this one, so I'm going to hit Command or Control Apple Z, undo it, and I'm going to change this to maybe like 23%. I'll start from the bottom and drag it up, and that's a little bit nicer. Everything looks good on hold to me right now, so I'm going to go ahead and close this guy and save it, and it'll put it right back into Lightroom. I can click on the original if I want to see just how much of adjustments we've done. And it looks like the only thing I'd probably change a little bit, maybe put a little bit of vibrance on here. Try not to go too much on this just because of the fact it's not going to be very printable. You can kind of zoom in and see what it's doing right here. If I reset that right there, you can see if I put way too much on there, you kind of get that real painted look. I'm more of a fan of the natural, but I like to see the color pop a little bit too. So usually about around that 30 range. 29 is fine for this one. And white balance is probably something I'd change a little bit too. It's got kind of an orange tint to it. It is a sunset, but they're losing the watercolor, so I might pull this back just a little bit. There we go. So you get more of a natural bluish color to it. And that's about it. Maybe pull in the highlights a little bit right there. Kind of fill us in some of the detail back in those clouds. Last thing I do is just export it to my Dropbox, and I have that preset and labeled under Instagram, so it basically puts it at a lower resolution for print quality, but perfect for online viewing. That way someone's not stealing your images, even if they're 1x1 squares. If you put it at a higher resolution, they'll still be able to print it. So now we have the file on our Dropbox. On my phone, I'm just going to open up the Dropbox app. There's my image, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now it's on my camera roll. I'm just going to open up Square Ready. And we'll go ahead and add that image. So I can save it like this if I want, so it's the wide format. Instagram seems to like squares all the time, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this one and maybe see if I want to change it a little bit. I like the water up in the foreground here, so for this one I might zoom in a bit. Make sure that horizon line is still straight. And I can save it right there straight through to Instagram. And if I want to make any minor adjustments on here, I can. This little slider on the Lux usually gives a little bit more detail. I'll typically enhance them a little bit more just because they look a little better on a phone. And maybe add a tiny bit of saturation in there. Next, that's it. Add your title, hashtag if you want, and post it. That's it. Thanks for sticking in, guys. Let me know if you have any questions or any tutorials that you want to see. If you want to visit my Instagram account, it is areakphotos, and website is www.areakphotos.com. Thanks for watching.